Now it's time for RTB 101. This is the segment where we talk about practical questions to help equip you to share your faith with friends and family more effectively. And I'm here with my colleague and astrophysicist, Dr. Jeff Zweerink. Welcome back, Jeff.
Hi, Krista. It's good to be here always.
You know, I know that many of us have students in our lives, maybe our children, maybe ourselves, that we're in a public school context, and we're going to be learning about topics in science that maybe seem to contradict our faith. Maybe our teachers are even trying to actively undermine our faith. So we want to talk a little bit about how we can maintain our faith in that context. What practical advice could you give students?
Well, I would say there's two aspects of that. And first and foremost is just a recognition that the teacher's job is there to teach you a subject, and your job is there to learn that subject. And so don't worry about whether this might be against my faith. It's like you're especially if you're going into science, you're going to have to know what the theory of evolution has to say. So just be an active participant and really learn and engage and show that you demonstrate knowledge of that very well. The other aspect is you need to have people around so that you can answer your questions and make sure it's not undermining your faith. So those are kind of the two things I would say that are real critical there, especially as you're starting to engage those topics in school.
I can actually see there would be advantage to learning evolution from somebody who believes in evolution because you really want to have mastery of it. And the best way to have a mastery of a topic that you're not sure you agree with is really to study it, to really get into the details of it.
It really is. I mean, those are the people who are going to know why do they believe this, why do they think this is true and not the other. They're going to give you the inside scoop, the best evidence for it, where, you know, if you have somebody who may or may not agree, they may not understand what the best arguments, because they really aren't vested in it, if you will. And in the same way, as a Christian, that gives us a great opportunity. The more we know about Christianity, the better we're going to be able to advocate and articulate it well.
That's a really good way of kind of reversing the negative narrative of, oh, I don't want to learn this, to, hey, this is an opportunity to really dig into the details and find out what I believe. Now, I can imagine that some students might feel kind of nervous. They might feel like, well, in order to be a good Christian, I need to convince my teacher. You know, is that the time to get into a debate with my teacher to stand for the Bible? I mean, I want to stand for Jesus.
Well, that is very much true. And so the first thing I would, again, just reiterate is that you're there primarily to, first and foremost, to learn, and the teacher's there to teach. And so that's the first thing you're there to do. But then beyond that, you need to have a little bit of social skills and a little bit of wisdom as, you know, is the teacher receptive to going up and talking? The stand up in the middle of the class and say, hey, you're wrong to the teacher, that's almost never going to go well. But, you know, build a relationship with the teacher, talk to them, figure out why do they think. You may be able to offer some insight or get them to think about things, but it's going to be in the context of a relationship, typically not in the middle of a debate in the middle of class.
So maybe debating my teacher is not a good idea if I'm a student?
I would advise against that most of the time. There's times where God calls people out and does things that are a little bit outside of the ordinary, and I would put that outside of the ordinary.
Okay. Now, when we think about going into science as a career, I know that's something you and I are very passionate about. We're talking about the lab a lot these days on the show. But if a student is going to go into science as a career, they're going to have to take a lot of science classes. Should they expect to be attacked for their faith? Have you been attacked a lot as you have gone through your education programs to become an astrophysicist?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I would say it's going to depend on the person, and it's going to depend on the discipline. I can't say I was attacked a lot. In fact, the most aggressive attack I had was actually from an English professor, not from any of my science professors. But then again, I wasn't in dealing with a lot of evolution, and so that's a place where you're going to probably expect a little more, where what the science is saying is really kind of I don't want to say in opposition, but where the tension between that and Christianity is the greatest. And so I would expect there's going to be some attack and be prepared for it. But to go in and say, well, it's going to be this kind of attack no matter what the discipline, I think that's hard to quantify.
So it really depends on if I'm going into paleontology versus physics, the attacks might be different, if non-existent.
Well, and I would say this, often the amount of attack you're going to get is related to how you deal with things. If you're a winsome, engaging person, it's a lot harder to attack you, especially if you've developed a relationship with your professors. If you're kind of a jerk or whatever, you can anticipate, you can invite some attacks that wouldn't have been there otherwise.
Thanks, Jeff. That's some really good advice. And later in the program, Monica is going to be highlighting some of the alumni from our student mentoring program called The Lab. And that is an opportunity for students who are going into the sciences to come hang out with us for a few days this summer. So stay tuned to find out more about that program and how you can help encourage the next generation of scientists.